I said I'd come back with a video about doing the GoFloppy 3.5 setup on the Amiga 1200. So I'm going to go through that with you now, and you're going to see what the process is like. So we're going to start with the GoFloppy. This one is essentially factory default, has had no settings changed. It's a red LED version. And this is my Amiga 1200, which I've got a PS2 keyboard connected on a PM Developments PS2 to a 1200 adapter. And this model has got a China FZ354 floppy disk drive in. So, the first part of this video, we're going to install the GoFloppy loosely to test it. And the second part of this video, we're going to prep the SD card and we're going to test that. And we're going to go through the entire process in a clear, simple manner. Starting with the floppy disk. So, remove the cables from the back of the China floppy drive. Put something on top of it to stop things shorting out. Make sure your GoFloppy is the correct way up, pointing the wrong way out the floppy disk drive. Floppy disk going that way. This is not a big deal because we'll see. Connect the IDE data cable, exactly the same orientation, but the power connector goes on the other side, upside down, which is a little tricky. There we go. That's it fitted to the Amiga. So we've got the drive fitted to the Amiga. We now need to prepare a card. What I've done, I'm using Windows 7. The first thing I've done is I've launched a command prompt. The second thing I've done is I've made that command prompt an administrator command prompt. And the third thing I've done is I've typed in disk part. Then I'm going to type in list disk. This lists two disks. One is 970 meg, which is the 1 gig SD card in the SD card slot. So we're going to select that, disk 1, select disk 1. We've selected it, we're going to clean it so it's got no partition information on or anything. Done. You'll notice it's changed at the top left there. SD FAT32, we're going to format it now. It's an SD card, it's not a hard disk. There's a limited lifetimes to the cells, much shorter than say a hard disk in theory, so we're going to quick format it. We're going to go for a file system of, oh, will you look at that, unknown capacity. Ah, that's right, we have to eject it. Eject the SD card so it disappears. Then reconnect it. We need to format the disk. Let's format the disk. Okay, unknown capacity. You know those things that you try and you repeat the process and it works perfectly and you think I'll have another go at doing that and then it doesn't work properly. This is one of those things. Okay, so back to disk part. 970 meg. Free. It's got no partitions on it. So select disk 1 just to make sure we've got the correct disk located, and then we're going to create a primary partition, which is creating a partition that is primary. Cool. Then we eject it again. Wait a few seconds, disappears. Reconnect it again. It should reappear. It should tell us it needs formatted, but the window's on the screen's on the other window. Format disk. That's on the other window. Now we have the capacity. FAT is the default. We don't want FAT. We want FAT32. The manual says FAT32. Maybe it supports FAT, but it says FAT32, so we're going to go FAT32. Volume label. I'm going to call it GoFloppy because that's what it's for. We're going to quick format it. There we go. Done. Right. Cool. So, the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got some ADF files on that. And finally, the last thing we need to do is we need to configure the GoFloppy. Except we don't really need to configure the GoFloppy. All we need to do is plug the SD card in it and switch the Amiga on, and possibly, well, it's selected disk 1 for Jesus on E's, so let's let it do its thing. I didn't think about this. And I haven't got a copy. Anyway, I think you can see quite clearly there's no SD cards, there's no IDE hard disks in there. It's not booting off PCMCIA because there's nothing in the PCMCIA slot. The only thing it could boot off is the GoFloppy, and the amount of setup I've had to do on the GoFloppy is format an SD card as FAT32, stick an ADF file on it and plug it in. You can't get much simpler. It's a really easy process. I'm quite happy with this. I like it. And there is an OLED, although you can't see what it's showing. It's too bright on this screen for some reason. Maybe, bear with me. Tricky to film. I could probably get a photograph of it more easily. That probably sounded awful when I did that, so my apologies. Anyway, that's it. Oh, yeah, if you want to switch disk images, you can switch disk image, say Workbench 1. Let's go for a reboot. I must have pressed the wrong key. Or maybe it's because it's in a demo. Who knows? Maybe my keyboard stopped working. Right, so the GoFloppy has remembered the disk image that I selected last. This is very useful. And it's loading the install disk from Workbench 3.1 at the moment. Except there's no Workbench library on that disk, which, because I've got the custom 3.1 ROMs in, it won't work. Well, it was worth a try. Anyway, that's the basic principle. Hope you enjoyed the video. I don't think you can really say there's much to the setup process, really, is there? Simple. Oh, right, yeah, there was one thing I wanted to mention. The orientation of this doesn't bug me, because what I would like to do is get a super thin floppy drive cable, if I can find one, ideally made out of the same kind of material as the standard Amiga 1200 keyboard connector, so that I can then sit this on top of the case, orientated that way round, and put SD cards in there. I might just ribbon cable it to the back and have it as DF1. I might get an internal one, I don't know. I like floppy disks though. I mean, it does do some sounds from the buzzer that's on board, and it reads the cards fine, but I just like floppy drives. This is cool. If you want a Goex, a Gotek, a Flashfloppy, something like that, try one of these. They're good. I like it. Enjoy.